Today is April the 18th, 2017. We are in Redondo Beach outside the City Council chambers. Tonight, we're going to be fighting CCA, Community Choice Aggregation, which is the latest scam in Agenda 21. What they are trying to do is they are trying to circumvent the Southern California monopoly, which is not a good thing. We don't need a monopoly here in Southern California with our energy, but their solution to that is more government. So what they want to do is they want to create a brand new JPA to administer our energy. For those of you who watch my videos, SCAG, the Southern California Association of Governments, is a JPA. So they want to create a whole new SCAG to administer our energy policy, and we don't need more layers of government. So that's why we're here tonight.
So what are your options with us? We're asking you to form a JPA with your neighbors here in the South Bay as well as West Side cities that want to work with us. And we want to have that Joint Powers Authority, that JPA, run this CCA. We'd like each of the participating cities to have a seat on the board, and we think a board of 14 to 20 cities is about just the right mix.
Thank you. Chris Wilson-White, District 1. Aggregation is not necessarily a guarantee of the best rate. Just because residents are in an aggregated community, that doesn't mean they're receiving the best rate. Rates vary from town to town and supplier to supplier. For instance, in Illinois, where they've already instituted this aggregation, many towns now have higher rates than those offered by the original utility or other third-party suppliers. Aggregation eliminates choice. Municipal aggregation is a throwback to the old way consumers didn't have a choice. It defeats the purpose of electricity deregulation. Deregulation fuels price competition and innovation. We could get locked into long-term contracts. Many of the aggregated municipalities at the moment are committing to contracts that remain in effect for several years. Those residents are locked into long-term agreements which often include increases down the road. And then the final thing I'd like to say is Big Brother is watching. In aggregated communities, the consumer's personal energy usage will now be accessible by government agencies. Through smart meters and aggregation, they're now able to track energy usage both on an individual and a municipal level. We need less government oversight, not more.
Hey, Senator Wilson-White, and then Gary Millman.
Hello. I, as my husband, we live in District 1, and we've lived there for almost 20 years now. For me, 46 years in South Bay. Community choice aggregation agencies are essentially government control of one of the key elements of our modern society, electrical supply. To be blunt, public power generation is an objective of mainstream advocates of democratic socialism, and it will be difficult to privatize electricity generation once it is controlled by government. There will be an uncertainty about future electricity rates. A board of appointed politicians will make decisions that will ultimately determine electricity rates for our community choice aggregation agency customers. The majority of this board may choose agency objectives, policies, and practices that may impose significant fees or significant rate increases for some customers. Community choice aggregation agency members may be compelled to prioritize climate change and social justice at the expense of maintaining steady rates, especially if investor-owned utilities cease to be a viable alternative choice. It is probable that local elected officials who desire to be appointed to a community choice aggregation agency board will be the most zealous about fighting climate change and advancing social justice regardless of cost, and their values will affect priorities and policies. Income redistribution. Certain types of customers, major users, for-profit corporations, properties with high square footage, may be targeted by the Community Choice Aggregation Agency Board to pay disproportionately high prices so that other customers, low-income households, properties generating their own electricity with photovoltaic solar panels, senior citizens, veterans, students, etc. pay very little. Advocates for various demographic groups may end up fighting each other over who pays for electricity generation. Certain influential corporations, nonprofits, industries, and institutions may lobby the Community Choice Aggregation Agency Board successfully for exemptions or breaks. In the end, residential and small business customers may bear a disproportionate burden of the cost. Election campaigns for local office may be infiltrated by special interest groups seeking to influence community choice aggregation. Electricity supply is a big business with a lot of power and money at stake. Powerful special interest groups will be continually positioning themselves to obtain a majority on the Community Choice Aggregation Agency Board. These groups will scheme to get majorities elected to local governing boards.
3 minutes is up, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Thank you. Pronounce your name again for me one more time. I apologize.
Strike 3, it's a record. Gary Linick, District 5.
Gary Gallego is next.
To me, this is just a more expansion of government. The bigger the government, the smaller the citizen. And I wrote down here when he was talking, it sounds like you have to pass the bill to find out what's in it moment. Right out of, I don't know where they created this stuff, the UNs and Sacramento. Who pays these guys to go around these cities and do this? The county, the state? I hope you guys are smart enough to know that this is just another expansion of government, another controlling factor that they want to bring in and use against us. Tax, take, and regulate. That's what they do up there. Tax, take, and regulate.
Lee, can you sit here and tape me?
Gary Gallego and then Janet West.
Oh, I got to say.
Good evening, Redondo Beach City Council. Gary Gallego, local resident. This is definitely a scam. I'm glad the people behind me realize that this is an expansion of government. What this is about taking a problem we have with private sector, which I don't really consider Southern California Edison private sector, but supposedly it is, and fixing their issues with a government solution, and it's a solution that we do not like. This is about putting the people of California onto renewable energy, which is all government mandated, and I should not use the word mandate because most of the language states that it's not mandated, that it's optional for the cities to do it. But the point I want to make is the free market does not like renewable energy. If the free market liked renewable energy, it would be producing it instead of the government forcing it onto all of us. Now, what everyone needs to understand is very important is this whole JPA scam. I think the people at home need to really realize what it is that is about to happen to them. Everyone needs to look up the Southern California Association of Governments. That is a joint powers authority, a JPA. That is an unelected board. They basically serve as the Parliament of Southern California. They are very much like the European Union Parliament. They are unelected, and they meet in downtown LA at 9 in the morning in the middle of the week when no one can go to their meetings. I went to their main regional council meeting last year in April when they passed their regional transportation plan, That was 52 mayors and city council members all sitting around in a room, and they passed a document that recommends a raise in taxes of $500 billion to recreate Southern California into this walkable, bikeable, pedestrian utopia where no one leaves their area and everyone lives in the same building that they work in. And there was no media there. No media there for that meeting with all those mayors getting together to make that policy. Well, this JPA, if created, will create another one of those bodies. You appear on the dais, you were elected to serve Redondo Beach. You were not elected to go to another city and sit on an unelected board and make energy policy for people in 13 other cities. That's what you were not elected to do. This is not constitutional at all. So please, keep that in mind. That's what's going on here. This whole joint powers authority is about creating another unelected board. So if you live in LA County, you live under the LA County Board of Supervisors, you live under SCAG, you live under SBCOG, and now you're going to live under this electricity JPA. That is 4 layers of county government that we have here in LA County. 4! And people wonder why we have the worst business climate in the country. Because there's too much government. No more unelected government, no more JPAs, no on CCA. Thank you.
Very good. Karen West and then Carol Houghton.
President Trump said today that the last election means that we, quote, voted to end the theft of American prosperity. This CCA is nothing more than stealing some more of our prosperity. They've passed the California legislators have passed all kinds of new taxes. CCA creates another public agency with benefit and salary costs and pension costs. Do you realize how much pension liability we already have in the state of California? Nobody really knows because they play around with the figures. They weren't talking about the real initial costs for setting this up. In the agenda material, it said LA County for their GPA, it's going to cost hundreds of millions of dollars, not that $12 million that he talked about. In your agenda material, it says, quote, the initial costs for the implementation of CCA shall be included in the customer charges for electric charges. It's all going to be passed on to your customers. I know some people who have put in solar energy, and every year the amount that they get credited for it decreases. And I bet you anything, all of their models show the top amount, but not what they're going to pay over the years. Plus, who knows what they're going to enact years down the road. It says right in that material for your agenda, one of the 2 primary goals is reducing greenhouse gases. One of the 2 primary goals. Okay, this is not about reducing costs for your customers. They have a goal of using 100% renewables in 10 years. What if the renewable energy industry is not ready for that? When I like renewables, I don't know anybody who doesn't, but the industry is just not at that level. When it is, our for-profit companies will be using it. Thank you.
Thank you. Carol Houghton, and then I believe it says Lyku, K-O-U.
Good evening, I'm Carol Houghton. As you're making this decision, I would encourage you, I would urge you to look at a real-world example of just such a GPA, just such a community choice aggregate. In your letter of introduction, You have on page 1, it says the South Bay Clean Power promises local jobs, local power generation, and local economic investment. These are the same promises made by the Marin Clean Energy. I will say that again. Marin Clean Energy. Same kind of thing you're looking at here. Now, after 7 years, Redondo Clean Energy has found that they've failed on almost all these promises. After 7 years, only 2% of the energy is net renewable that is generated locally. 2%. Job employment. 3 full-time jobs came out of this whole thing. This part I don't understand about the $2 billion of local money exported to Shell in The Hague, Electric of France to Paris, Exelon in Chicago, Calpine in Houston, and G2 Energy in Atlanta. That doesn't sound very local to me. What is the scope of South Bay Clean Power and the Community Choice Aggregate? On page 2 of your executive summary, it says that there are no specific deliverables. Note that unlike the Los Angeles County Community Choice Energy, this report does not forecast the results of implementing a CCA in any quantitative manner. How can you forecast the renewable content of a program's energy portfolio, or what the rates are going to be charged to the customers, what it'll be in comparison to Southern California Edison's rates? How can you compare that? Without quantified deliverables, how can anyone make a decision about participating? Also, on page 7 of the cover letter, it states that SBCP may include the purchase of power from Southern California Edison. Now this is very odd, because the program desires to replace Southern California Edison with 100% local clean energy. Since SCE has difficulty attaining state-mandated renewable portfolio standard annual mandates, it's unlikely that Southern California Edison would like to sell to SBCP a portion of its renewables or a large hydro energy, hydro energy, since these two energy sources account...
Carol, your time's up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, darn, I had good stuff for you, too.
Laiku and Perry Johnson is next.
My name is Miku. Thanks for allowing me to speak tonight. I'm going to be talking about the Sonoma Clean Power greenwashing. Sonoma Clean Power is using a financial instrument called Renewable Energy Certificates, RECs, to claim that they are greener than PG&E. Without their use of RECs, Sonoma Clean Power will create close to double the greenhouse gas emissions of PG&E. So there you go, it's a lie already. RECs were created by splitting the product of a renewable power source into two commodities, the electricity and its renewable attribute. The hope and assumption was that the REC would encourage increased investment in renewable generating capacity. But the vast majority of the REC only add to the bottom line of the energy generator and enables big companies like Wells Fargo, Whole Foods, Vails Resort, and Starbucks to green up their power. Sonoma Clean Power Energy advertised that they provide more renewables but are therefore cleaner than PG&E. But the only reason that they achieve that is by using RECs. Randy Udall, a longtime renewable energy advocate, said that he was at the beginning when they invented this idea, and he is beginning to think that they should have strangled it in the crib. His chief complaint was that REC marketers were essentially becoming pre-selling indulgence, letting people and companies throw easy money at the problem instead of cutting back on energy use and installing windmills and solar panels. Why build when you can buy an REC for pennies on a dollar? How cheap are they? The typical household uses 500 kilowatts of electricity per month. REC can be purchased 1/10 of 1 cent per kilowatt. So REC enables the average household to think they are using 100% renewable energy for about 50 cents per month. On their website and advertisements, Sonoma Clean Power is marketing itself as greener they because they are supplying 33% of the renewable energy, and PG&E is supplying 20%. The additional 13% that Sonoma Clean Power is providing is through the purchase of RECs. So for SCP to be 100% renewable option, 80% of the energy must be provided by REC for an additional cost of $10 to $15 per month. Since anyone can buy their own REC for 50 cents per month, SCP will therefore be charging the customers 20 to 30 times the market price. So, if Sonoma Clean Power cannot provide cleaner energy than PG&E, they should pull the plug on the project instead of wasting millions of dollars on startups and operational costs. With a large customer base, the startup cost could be $10 million per year.
Sorry, your time's up. Harry Johnson, and then after that will be Tracy H.
Mayor Brand, members of the Hermosa Beach, Redondo Beach City Council. None of the two gentlemen here tonight talked about the liability that the city has. I'm not talking about the ratepayers, the city has. And if you go to the Joint Power Authority Agreement, section 2.5.7, it talks about the liability the city has. This agreement this section allows an establishment for each municipal's financial firewall in which the municipality is not liable for payment to energy suppliers if the Joint Power Authority decides to invoke the clause. That's a big if. The financial firewall is only functional if the respective energy supplier acknowledges the existence of the firewall and accepts a JPA statement that individual JPA members are not liable for payment should the JPA invoke the firewall. There's another big if. You have to convince your suppliers to agree to the financial firewall, otherwise the city government is responsible for that contract. It remains unclear how remaining contracts might be spread across South Bay Clean Power's captive customer base should the JPA fold. So no matter what he says, it's in their JPA authority that the ultimate responsibility for the energy contracts is you guys. You're responsible. Section 6.6 of the Joint Power Authority Agreement states that withdrawing municipalities shall be liable for, and I'm going to quote, but as I'm quoting, I'll be using the word party, which means Redondo Beach, and I'll be using the word authority, which means the Joint Power Authority. I quote, claims, demands, damages, and other financial obligations for which the party may remain liable include, but are not limited to, losses from the resale of power contracted for the authority to serve the party's load in the CCA program. As a condition precedent to a party's withdrawal from the authority, or in the event of an affirmative vote to involuntarily terminate a party, the authority may withhold funds from otherwise owing to the party, or may require the party to deposit sufficient funds with the authority as reasonably determined by the authority and approved by a vote of the board to cover the party's financial obligations, unquote. So what this says is, you're responsible for whatever the Joint Power Authority does. You, the municipality. That's section 6.6. You may ask your attorney to look that up. If you analyze section 6.6, you'll see once you sign up, it's going to be impossible to get out. So the Joint Power Authority doesn't do a very good job or have financial problems, you have the liability. The city has the liability. Also, the quote about...
Sorry, your time's up. Tracy H. And then Harper Chicken. Shop.
Good evening, and thank you for allowing me this time. I'd like to speak to the conflicts. The business plan claims SBCP will be an integrated model that provides municipal members with, quote, a full suite of energy services from day-to-day power market operations through long-term planning to serve its municipal utility members. The draft business plan says that the lack of this has been a downfall for Marin Clean Energy for 7 years. Downfall? This is a false citation by SBCP. MCE was based upon an integrated full services contract model with Shell Energy North America, in which SENA acted as both an energy supplier and as MCE's integrated scheduling coordinator, ISC. SBCP claims that SBCP needs an ISC to be successful, while MCE has failed to deliver on many of its commitments to the Marin County community. See page 1 of this report. An ISC is not to blame for MCE's failed policy and management decisions. Thus, citing MCE's lack of an ISC is not sufficient cause to SBCP to attempt to distance itself from the possibility that SBCP may duplicate MCE's poor 7-year track record. However, business plan stated objective is to move away from gas-fired, gas supply generation. Page 18 states that SBCP's risk management, as carried out by the scheduling coordinator, may entail calling on various assets of SBCP, including peaker plant tolling agreement. This is gas-fired generation. Cover letter, page 3, business plan, page 21, calls for elimination of burning natural gas. JPA agreement, page 1 of 15. Establish an energy portfolio that minimizes the use of Category 3, unbundled renewable energy credits. Minimizes from what level? How about RECs, RECs? Business plan letter of introduction, page 2. No use of Category 3 unbundled renewable energy certificates, RECs, to achieve our 100% renewables goal. Which path does SBCP claim to follow? No use was committed by Silicon Valley Clean Power until its staff determined it would not meet its renewable energy commitment. During its April 12th board meeting, staff consultants suggested SBCP revise its portfolio so that 50% of the clean energy was unbundled RECs Category 3 energy. Thank you for your time.
Okay, SBCP's greenhouse gas goals, but there's inconvenient truths. The business plan on page 21 cites California's total greenhouse gas emissions and states that the decarbonizing depends on 100% renewable energy. But the SBCP fails to reconcile that two popular renewables reportedly increase greenhouse gas emissions or undermine clean air. These include landfill gas to energy, which the Sierra Club unanimously concludes emits more greenhouse gas than it removes. Similarly, this report mentions that biomass emissions add harmful particulates to the air. A medium-sized biomass plant consumes more than 20 million gallons of water. Where does that water come from during drought? Based upon SBCP's business plan, metropolitan smog issues around LA are not relevant in the ardent pursuit of renewable energy. SBCP advocates patterning its implementation off of Redwood Coast Energy Authority. Their business plan identifies status of RECA's implementation and includes on page 99 the following text: process guidelines for development of a request for offers for local biomass power. Let's also talk about this authority's control over citizens. The plan states that SBCP's regional JPA governance is designed to support and enhance acceleration of this vision about how the region should be managed, supporting broad sectoral carbon reductions, not only for electricity generation, but also transportation, electrification, and fuel switching of appliances. CCRs are the only load-serving entity that can also leverage local control authorities to accomplish this goal. There's the money management issue, which has been cited by some elected officials. It's a false belief. It's merely a workflow mechanism. I'd also like to remind you that this GPA will end up being able to exploit and control land use and transportation decisions. It's not just about energy. Milton Herring was the one no vote. He was prescient compared to his colleagues in the city of Torrance, and he recognized that this is a burdensome bureaucracy with massive costs. You have a responsibility, a fiduciary responsibility to your citizens in this city. And it's not acceptable to toss it off to staff to try to cover it up. This is a costly program. I like to call it communistic anti-choice aggravation, precisely because it's another government entity, a lot like Obamacare, in which it's government subsidy and taxpayer dollars that creates this supposed competition. It's costly at the outside, it's costly at the end, it's based on false metrics claiming that it will reduce greenhouse gases when it actually does not. The last thing that the residents of this city or any city need is another government bureaucracy in which you, as a city council, will have reduced authority. And remember, the rates are set by the JPA, and you will have no choice in being able to change that. Doesn't sound like local control to me, because it's not.
So Lynn Rosenblum, and then the last card is from Joe Sullivan.
Okay. I'm going to ask maybe if the signs could come down because I'm a lone wolf here.
You can ask.
Even though I know some of these people really well. We have a house together that's important.
She really started the clock.
Your clock's already started.
Did we start the clock?
I'm not a man. So
Well, whatever you are. I said man. That's
Okay.
rude.
So, I'm Lynn Rosenblum. I've been a long-time resident of Redondo Beach. Over 40 years, I keep moving away, I keep moving back. And one of the reasons I keep moving back is because it's a clean city, there's a lot of cleanliness, and there's a lot of conscience. And I just want to remind all of you and bring the temperature down a little bit why we're here tonight. And that's because we're simply, and I had to write it down because I'm a little nervous after that we're here to receive, file, and review this plan. And I was so impressed with Councilman MD and her questions, knowing that she has these questions in her mind, but to keep going with them. Councilman Arby, I haven't met you in all the years, but again, all those questions were great. So that's what I'd say is let's just keep asking these questions because that's what we're here tonight. I encourage you, as a resident of Redondo Beach, to go ahead with this, to receive it, to review it, and take a look at you. As Joe said, if it's not the plan for you, but let me tell you something. I think we need to do something. We've got to do something. My son lives in China. I look at the weather every day. I see sunny, Redondo Beach. I look at the weather for the city he is in China, which I'm not going to divulge after what I just went through here. But the city says unhealthy, unhealthy, unhealthy air. We don't want to have that in our city ever. We want to be able to move to renewable energy. I think the great thing about this plan, and I know a lot about it just as a regular citizen, and it's physically responsible, but more than that, it's something I've seen in this city more than any other city I've lived in, and I've lived all over the world, and that's that it has emotional intelligence. And that's something we don't see in government, I guess, very much, or sometimes in chambers. And what you guys go through, hats off to you for running for these offices and being here. And I'm so proud to be a part of Redondo Beach and see this city council. But please, if you have questions, ask Joe, get with him. I know, staff time, everybody talks about staff time and taking time to talk to Joe. I'm sure Joe and the people represented here, in some cases I've known for over 30 years. They are not liars. They are not people. Yes, they're special interests because you know what? They're really special people. They don't get enough remuneration, resources, or anything to put the hours and hours and hours that they have put into this innovation to come up with this kind of program. We have got to do something. You remember what Los Angeles used to look like years ago with all the pollution, everything that went on? Is that what we want? Is that what we want to see?
Thank you, Lynn, your time's up.
Okay, I apologize, Mayor Brand, I didn't mean to go over.
No problem. Thank you. Joe Sullivan, and again, that's the end of our speaker cards. And if you want to speak, just get in line and come on up.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and staff. Thank you for having me. My name is Joe Sullivan. I work for the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 11, as well as the National Electrical Contractors Association of Los Angeles County. We represent approximately 350 electrical contractors here locally that employ approximately 10,000 electricians. And I'm speaking in support of community choice aggregation tonight. We have found that when CCAs are properly structured with the right program elements, they can be very powerful job creators. And when I say the right program elements, I'm talking about a commitment to a build-out of distributed energy resources, links to apprenticeship to turn temporary jobs into lifelong careers, all the money for the program reinvested back into the program, community involvement, and then back office partners that provide the skills and resources to foster a growing CCA. The demand for large-scale solar projects like we've seen out in the Antelope Valley has caused us to hire hundreds of apprentices. Our apprenticeship program is pretty amazing. We invest approximately $35,000 per apprentice and train them for 5 years, at which time they have employment for life anywhere in the U.S. or Canada if they work hard for it and want it. They have full family medical at the 4th month. It's almost entirely privately funded. It's really a remarkable system that turns these temporary jobs into lifelong careers. We, IBW NECA, have been pretty involved with the CCA processes throughout the county. We've attended a number of meetings, and we have found that the program that most embodies the program elements we're looking for is the South Bay Clean Power model. So those are my main points. I'd like to close by saying right now the cheapest power in the United States is utility scale solar out in the desert. I'd like to add that municipal owned utilities, government, are on the average 20% cheaper power than investor owned utilities. So there's some wiggle room in there, and that's why we're seeing CCAs almost entirely across the board providing cheaper power. In fact, Sonoma's rates are cheaper than the utility, PG&E, and they just gave back $1 million to ratepayers. Much of it went to school districts to buy their solar from them. So a lot of these CCAs are successful. Some aren't, but they don't have the right program elements. They're not done properly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rolf Strepsenberg, District 1. Well, welcome to the Center Council of Electricity. This is a fun one. I would say at best, this might be an okay deal. There's nothing to substantiate that. We know that it's going to have fixed costs. It's going to have staff time that's demanded to go into it. Just tonight alone, you authorized hundreds of thousands of dollars in the consent calendar, and one of the claims for that is lack of staff time, lack of staff. So if there's a lack of staff and staff time, I don't think we have the extra to go into something like this. It might be successful like DHS. It might be a failure like Beta. Either way, I'd say 20 years from now, I won't be anything that'll even be talked about except in history. I grew up on a farm in Iowa. We had the Rural Electric Co-op. It doesn't exist anymore. These things come and go. This is nothing more than a forced co-op. And I personally didn't want anything to do with it. The Economist a couple months ago wrote a great feature article called Clean Energy's Dirty Secret, which talked a lot about all the downsides of clean energy, and with where it's at today and where it's headed, that path isn't sustainable. It's been so heavily subsidized, and to get it where it's at today. Joe brought up that all these great buzzwords like pump power. You don't have the geography for pump power here. You might get it up in the mountains or go someplace else and then pump, bring the power in from those places, but it's not a local thing for us. It doesn't exist here. There's a pilot program, I think, in Temecula, that's Temecula. I think for the average consumer, this is just going to be confusing for them and forcing them to switch over. And then is there a guarantee that there's no switching fee to switch out of it? Well, what if there's a $30 switching fee to switch back out of it? Maybe over that $1 a month that you're going to save in 3 years, you might recoup that switching fee. That'd be great. It just does not come across. It's full of lots of buzzwords. There's no good meat to it. There's so many questions to it, you can't even begin to cover in these 3-minute things. And the other thing that I noticed that as far as the fixed cost versus the savings, we're low, relatively low energy consumers compared to the others on that list. So our fixed costs are going to be higher per capita for us versus the savings. And it just isn't going to work out for us. Maybe in a couple of years, maybe if it's proven out, something we should get into. Is it going to be more expensive then? I doubt it. It could be, but I think for now, the best thing to do is, the Japanese have a saying for when I worked at Toyota, says, do nothing for now. Let's wait and see what happens. We don't need to do this. We don't need to end up in another lawsuit because we got into something and then we don't want to stay in it. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to just say that,
Yeah, state your name, please.
Mike Hunt from Orange County. Every time I hear clean power and renewable energy, I cringe because I can't think of a working model of it that has ever worked. And honestly, this CCA thing has boondoggle written all over it. And if I was you, I would just save yourself the aggravation. I would just not go for it. I don't think it's a very good idea. So that's all I have to say. Thank you. I'm going to take off.
My name is Edwin Uturdi. I'm a Redondo resident. What I'm hearing is the representative said that it's going to save money. But I saw one of the slides. If whoever's working the slides, if we can go back, it says one of the lines says that staff and economics unknown.
That's all you need to know.
Good evening. My name is Steve Collins from District 3. I'm a lifelong resident of Redondo Beach. And I'm here to speak on behalf of the South Bay Clean Power folks, particularly Joe Galliani, with whom I've served in a volunteer capacity in Redondo Beach for some number of years. We served on the South Bay Bicycle Coalition Board of Directors together for a couple of years. And it didn't take me long being around Joe to realize how brilliant he is. So if any of you haven't spent at least a few minutes talking with this man, you would be thoroughly impressed. Politically, we couldn't be farther apart. Yet he's so influential to me in the things he believes in. I follow him pretty closely in his CCA work to hear how he speaks to other councils and the things he talks about, the working parts of the CCAs. And while all of that's mostly over my head, I completely trust Joe and his judgment on what this might do for our community. But more importantly, what it might do for all of us. I am profoundly grateful for people like Joe, who decades ago saw to it that we'd have catalytic converters and similar types of emission controls that probably suffered the same kind of arguments that we're hearing tonight. Financial arguments, feasibility arguments, and so on. But I recall standing on the schoolyard of Jefferson Elementary decades ago, looking towards the mountains and finding it difficult to see through the smog, to see the mountains on occasion. We don't have that problem anymore. It's rare. And so I think it's time for us to look beyond what might be a little bit of, a few pennies here or there, and stop fretting over whether something is just a little bit more expensive or less expensive, and maybe look toward leadership like Joe Galliani's providing for us to look forward to the future and take care of our environment and see to it that our children here enjoy the same kind of clean air and environment that I've been the beneficiary of for the decades that I've been here in this city. So I would encourage you to support the South Bay Clean Power in particular, because I know Joe and I trust him implicitly. And I would encourage you to look closely at receiving this and doing what you guys are elected to do, is vet this stuff for us, because we don't have the time and the patience and the wherewithal to do what you guys do. This is something you guys are good at, and I would really appreciate it as one of your constituents to look closely at this program and consider Joe's CCA. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. My name is Craig Cadwallader, and I'm speaking as a advisory member of the South Bay Clean Power Group since its inception. And first of all, Mr. Mayor, congratulations, and Councilmember Grant and Lowenstein, congratulations on your position. My background is I have undergraduate and graduate degrees in business. I look at this from a business perspective, and I also look at it from an environmental perspective. And to me, this is a smart, intelligent way to go forward. And Councilmember Barbie, you mentioned return on investment. In my opinion, if this was a break-even cost, yet we got clean power on it, that's a return on investment. And I think it's smart, and I think it's something we should strive for. You yourself appreciate clean power. And this is a recommendation to study this, to analyze the facts and look at what the truth is. And I strongly encourage the city to do that. And look at the numbers, look at the examples. Yes, there are examples of maybe things that didn't work as well, but things move forward. We build on that and do better alternatives going forward. I don't see the downside on this. I see an upside. I see an upside on potentially reducing costs, on going to clean energy sources that from my perspective, a healthy, clean environment is good for business, it's good for property values, it's good for tourism. I can't find a downside on that. And this, if it didn't produce the savings and did help produce a cleaner, healthier environment, that's worth pursuing. This is a smarter way to go. This is advancing to do something more intelligent that will serve all of us equally. The ability to opt out of this is built into it. So to me, the individual risk is nil. And I think that if somebody doesn't want to participate in it, just opt out. But I think a lot of us in the whole South Bay area would be better served by going with the South Bay Clean Power Program or with the LA County. I prefer the South Bay version because it's more focused on us and taking care of our needs more directly. But either way, it's an advantage to everybody. So I strongly urge the council to instruct staff to go ahead with this analysis and to look at the facts and take the emotion out of it. And I think when you see the facts that this will look like a smarter alternative, and I hope you will go forward with that. Thank you.
I'll entertain a motion, or nothing's going to happen.
I'm going to make the motion to receive and file South Bay Clean Power Working Group's draft business plan and Joint Powers Authority agreement, and direct staff to perform an analysis of the business plan, the JPA agreement, and the city potentially joining either South Bay CCA program as well as the Los Angeles County CCA program, and return with recommendations and per Councilwoman MD, done at staff and city attorney's pleasure, based on not pushing any existing priorities out of the way.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
So there's 3 in favor and 2 opposed. I think it's pretty clear who that was. Okay, well, I'm not going to veto, so motion passes.